so we've talked about the church reaching out, going out into our communities and finding a way to get alongside and really listen and hear what's happening. We've talked about needing to become informed about what the overall infrastructure really is that does support some of the racist things that are happening among us. But the church also has some other functions, one of which is to be a prophetic voice. So once we've begun to hear and to learn and to understand what the real felt needs and hurts are in our own communities, we have to be able to raise our voices about that. We've got to become somewhat fearless about that, and I think I mean that's part of our heritage. This goes back to, this goes way back. The people chosen by God were always supposed to be a prophetic voice. They were always supposed to be about the business of living with justice and living with peace. And when the people weren't doing that, that's when God sent the prophets. And so when we encounter among ourselves and in the world around us something that is not just and is not merciful and is not loving and is not full of holy peace, then we have to raise our voices about it. And we have to do it in such a way that we're not being patronizing. We have to be doing it as allies. And we have to remember that no matter how anxious we may be about it, ultimately we're probably not being asked to pay some kind of ultimate price for it. We're coming up this month on the commemoration of Jonathan Daniels, and he was the seminarian, white seminarian, who went to Mississippi and Alabama and was involved in civil rights movements. He was shot and killed by a sheriff who was standing on the front porch of a store. This particular store didn't even have a policy of not serving black customers, but he was walking toward the store with a Roman Catholic priest and with two young black girls, and this sheriff pulled his shotgun, and Jonathan Daniels jumped in front of the young girl, and it saved her life, and he died instantly. And he is commemorated now. There's an altar at Canterbury Cathedral dedicated to contemporary martyrs and saints, and he's commemorated there. We're, involving ourselves in this work, if we do it in a way that's effective, things are going to change. And change can always be a little anxiety-producing. But we're not being asked to do in this work something like jump in front of somebody's shotgun. We can't necessarily, we can't feed those anxieties about what the change will be like. The change, we have to go into this with the thought that what God is calling us to is something better than any of us could ask or imagine. And we never go into these things. Would we be willing to jump in front of someone and save their life? We'd like to think we would. But really, what we're being asked to do is listen. What we're being called to do is discover and listen, and take on some of the inevitable feelings of deep regret, if not to say shame, over what brothers and sisters live with all the time. I think we can do that. Because what does God do with regret and shame? but helps us heal. You know, the whole point is to get to forgiveness and reconciliation, and to be able to say, I love in a way that's faithful. As long as we have brothers and sisters who are living with this code shifting, this accommodating, this anxiety, this having to plan their lives in a way that we've never had to, we are enslaved by it. It's bad for us that this has to go on.
We think we're free, but we're busy building all of the gates and bridges and things that keep everybody out, and we're the ones in prison, inside our own prison gates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we as a diocese, as a church, need to speak truth to power. I think what you said about the Sermon on the Mount and how you broke that down, the incremental things that we and the majority culture can do to say, hey, I don't agree with this, within the parameters of a nonviolent movement, is something that I think is more loudly heard when someone that looks like you does it. So someone from the majority culture does it, they hear us or don't hear us all the time, but when someone that has power says no more, I think that says a lot.
I think it has to be shared power. I think that you bring a significant contribution to this, so does Kathy. And I think hearing those voices together, when we can operate together with a shared compassion for each other, but a shared analysis of what this is, and present that outside of our context, I think that's helpful. I think being able to emulate and to see us, to see the people of color and white people together, working through, talking through, struggling through this kind of combined analysis, help the larger community begin to see some of the same things.
Well, it's kind of like what you said, you don't fear what you don't know. I mean, you fear what you don't know. So the more you know and the more you care about each other, it's hard to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, the same with our Israeli and Palestinian brothers and sisters. And they get to know each other, and then they start teaching their children not to be afraid of each other.
And then they want to dismantle it, because if you love someone, you don't want to leave them in hurt and pain. You want to do what you can to help them.
Yes, which is why I think Golda Meir said, we will have conflict and violence and upheaval in the Middle East until we learn to love all the children more than we hate each other. And it's when we get to the point of saying, all the children are precious. All the children deserve to have certain kinds of things. All the children deserve, to be self-assured and not to have to switch identities, when we can say the most important thing about your identity, every one of you children, is that you're a beloved child of God. You are, every single one of you, image of God. And then we put into place structures that support that belief. And I think that's what the church is called to do. That's our job.